It's funny when the Wonka trailers first came out. I had a couple of friends saying, "Oh, that looks like crap. Like, I that's gonna be one of the worst movies." And I was quietly sitting there, like, "What? This feels like it's my jam." Glad to say that I was right. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ringing that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Wonka is here, a new musical fantasy film, and I'm using that term and that genre from the top because if you didn't know that as a musical, you're going to be quite pissed once the first 2 minutes of this movie starts because it's songs nonstop. But I think you should know that going in. They don't really promote it that much as if there's going to be that much music in it. They lean into the fantasy aspect, but they don't lean into the music aspect, which I think is a weird about face to do for audiences. Like, promote this to musical fans and you'll get the fans that you want and not piss off the others. That said, if you're a fan of the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Gene Wilder, this acts as a prequel to that film. So that movie had musical numbers. This movie had musical numbers, and they sort of go hand in hand with each other. This film is written and directed by Paul King, which for me, that is what was the biggest selling point for me to enjoy this film. When I saw the trailers and they were like, from the director of Paddington 1 and 2, I'm like, well, hell, I'm sold. And that's what did it for me. And whatever whimsy, heart, story, and hope that you felt in those two films, you get that here as well. I will say that the one thing that Wonka does and does quite well is it feels like it's a hopeful story. It's a story about life, love, any of those feelings you had, you're going to feel that here in Wonka. It's very hopeful. It's a gorgeous film. The musical numbers are great. The scale, the time, it's a really, really well put together film. And it's just, you don't really get many movies where you're like, I just feel good after leaving that movie. This is one of those movies. I think the cast is really solid from top to bottom. Keegan Michael Key is pretty much the person that probably steals the show. I didn't even know that Natasha Rothwell was in the movie, so it was good to sort of get that surprise and see that the cast, top to bottom, is great. Feels like it could be the natural prequel to what we got with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I do have one sort of issue, and it's not a massive thing. It doesn't really pull away from me enjoying the movie, but it's the Timothée Chalamet of it all. Timothée Chalamet puts on a really solid performance here. Like, he's doing the dance numbers, he's singing, he's having a good time. He puts his all into it. The problem is the shadow that he is sort of behind is the Gene Wilder of it all. And Gene Wilder's performance of Willy Wonka. Now, granted, it's at a point later in age, so maybe something in between where this film happens and where that film happens, a lot just occurs to him. He becomes very cynical and untrustworthy and a little bit more deranged isn't the word I'm looking for, but a little bit more on edge. Any of those things that you got from the performance that Gene Wilder gave, you don't get any of that from Timothée Chalamet. Timothée Chalamet is a very much one note, straight ahead, hopeful. Like, that's what you're getting. All of his is hope, and love. And so when you put them together, you're kind of like, this doesn't quite feel like. There are moments in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory where Gene Wilder feels like he might actually be wishing death upon all of these kids. And so you don't actually get any of that. I trust these folks, but I don't trust these. And what would I do if I was in a situation where I didn't trust these folks, or I don't like these kids or whatnot? Everything about this version of Wonka feels overly hopeful and overly happy, and he wants the best out of everything. And I think perhaps there's a film somewhere in between that sort of shows how he breaks down to that version. But there's just a charisma, something behind the eyes that Gene Wilder gave that this doesn't quite feel like this would be the natural progression for this. What he does in this film, if you're looking at it only as this film, Timothée Chalamet knocks it out the park. But if you're looking at it as this Wonka becomes the Wonka that we see later in life, there's a bit of a disconnect. And even though we get some of the greatest hits of what our Wonka with Gene Wilder said with a scratch that reverse. You get those moments, but they feel more of like, hey, I'm playing a caricature of Gene Wilder as opposed to embodying what that Wonka is. And so the only real disconnect that I have from this movie, and it's not enough to take me out of the film because I like what he's doing in this movie, but if you start thinking about, hey, this guy has to become the Gene Wilder era of Wonka, they don't quite land one to one. So that's my only sort of takeaway that I have. Like, that sort of sticks. Outside of that, this is a really fun movie. Paul King is 3 for me. And I do think that this is a movie. I wish they promoted the musical aspect of it more and sort of connected it more to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like, I feel like we should have started seeing that come back a little bit more. We should have probably seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory get like a limited release in theaters to sort of show that this is what we're going to. Because I think if you put that back in the movies, parents going to start taking their kids to go see it. The fact that it's a musical wouldn't be as jarring because you're like, oh, well, yeah, that's a musical too. So this sort of plays hand in hand. But yeah, on my scale of play it again, Sam, uh, I didn't mind that. Once is enough, or give me a time stone so I never have to think about this film again. This is a play it again, Sam. There's a couple caveats, play it again, Sam. But if you're into musicals, if you're not into musicals, this probably is not going to be for you. And then I would say go in with the mindset that maybe we're anticipating a film in between this film and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that sort of explains the descent into a little bit of madness or a little bit of untrust that uh, Wonka has. Because right now, the Wonka that we have with when this film ends is so hopeful that I can never get to the point where feels like he needs to trick kids into believing that Slugworth is Slugworth and that he wants you guys to steal. And the ones that do, I'm going to murder. And the ones that don't, you can have this factory for life. Like those two don't feel like they're the same person yet. But have you guys seen Wonka? And what did you guys think? Am I off in my assessment of Timothée Chalamet's version of Wonka? Go ahead, let me know. Leave your comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on X at Hollywood80i. You can hit us up on email at hollywoodalreadydidit@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcast. We're there. We will be starting that back up in the new year. And just timing wise didn't make a lot of sense to start with like 3 weeks left to go in the year. And there's really nothing to talk about besides this film and I think Aquaman that sort of fits what we do. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.